on the basis of logic, I will have to say that the original people, or the earliest people in the world, were black. They probably looked something like black African, Sub-Saharan black Africans do today. Now, it's very hard I don't think it's possible to know exactly what kind of features the earliest human beings had, because if you look in Africa, even if you look in East Africa, where the earliest humans are thought to have originated, there's a lot of the black people that live in that region have there's a lot of people with different types of features, so it's hard to know exactly what the earliest humans look like. But I think it's fairly certain that they would have had general features associated with Sub-Saharan Africans, such as dark skin, most likely tightly curled hair, etc., etc. They would have had the general features that are associated with Sub-Saharan Africans. And the reason that we can say this with confidence is because if you look at, for example, if you look at great apes are, a lot of them, chimpanzees, for example. Chimpanzees aren't the ancestors of humans, but human beings and chimpanzees share a common ancestor. But if you look at chimps have body hair that covers most of their body, and underneath their hair, I think chimpanzees and gorillas, underneath their fur, they have light pigmentation. So they have the dark fur, and underneath the fur is light pigmentation, because the areas of their body that are covered by fur do not need protection from the sun, because they're covered with fur that protects them from the sun. But the areas of their body that do not have hair on them, so their hands and their faces are dark. They have dark pigmentation to protect them from the sun. So I think that it is logical to assume that as the ancestors of human beings began to lose their hair, presumably the early ancestors of human beings that were like the common ancestors that human beings had with, say, monkeys, or modern day monkeys and modern day great apes such as chimpanzees and gorillas, those ancestors presumably had most of their body covered with hair. But as human beings' ancestors, the hominins, began to evolve and lose their body hair, most of their body hair, it is safe to assume that their skin began to develop darker pigmentation as they lost their body hair. So while say chimpanzees or gorillas have the light pigmentation under their hair and dark pigmentation in the exposed areas, as the hair began to lose hair. Let's say the early ancestors of human beings began to lose hair on their body. The exposed areas would have become steadily darker in pigmentation to protect them from the sun, so that by the time the ancestors of human beings were mostly hairless, like modern people are, or a lot of modern people are, most of their skin most of their body would have been dark colored or darkly pigmented to protect them from the sun. Because if you remember that the early, not just human beings, but the ancestors, the other hominins that preceded modern human beings, would have most likely been more or less naked most of the time, presumably completely naked most of the time. They wouldn't have had as much shelter as modern humans have, so they would have been walking around naked in the tropics, exposed to a great deal of sunshine. And one of the things with human beings, and presumably some of the other hominins, one of the advantages that modern human beings had prehistoric human beings had in terms of hunting over other large predators was that human beings were able to operate in the middle of the day in terms of hunting, because people sweat and a lot of other animals don't have that type of efficient cooling system, so they can't hunt in the middle of the day. Lions and leopards and those kinds of animals, those large predators, they hunt in the evening or they hunt at night, because they don't want to go out in the sun because they'll overheat. Whereas the human beings, early human beings were able to hunt animals in the middle of the day. And so if people were out hunting in the middle of the day, completely naked or almost completely naked, and spending a lot of time outside, much more time than the average person does today, they would have been heavily exposed to sun, so they would have needed to have that dark pigmentation. So it seems to me that early human beings almost certainly had dark skin, and presumably they would have had physical features that were similar to modern day Africans. So therefore, that's why I had come to the conclusion that we have to conclude that the first human beings, the earliest Homo sapiens, would have been dark-skinned and would have most likely looked quite similar to modern black Sub-Saharan Africans.